shackles of time and space, we present WAN Exclusive.
All right. Hello, Ray, nee Kelly Fleek, or formerly known as Kelly Fleek. Thank you so much for joining us on Weird at Night and having this exclusive discussion with me about our piece, Grow Heart.
Thank you. Thanks for talking to me. Thanks for making art with me.
Oh, my pleasure. I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to collaborate with you is that, you know, you're somebody who works with light art, but you also work with sculpture and painting and textiles and design, photography. You're a musician. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is how you see the connection through these different art forms.
Wow, that's a good question. Honestly, sometimes they happen all at once and sometimes they inform one another. So it's honestly most frequent that I've just seen something out in the world that I draw and I start making a textile out of it. And then before you know it, I'm taking film of it, you know, more photography. I don't know. They just kind of weave in and out of one another. I rarely have an intention when I begin of connecting them, and somehow they're inextricably linked. So
cool. So it sounds like it does kind of start with a drawing. I know we had like shared some drawings when we were first coming up with this. And some of the pieces that you've done before, like Cocoon and Nature Drag and Intimate Organa, and then of course Quarta Bronc is in our piece, you know, is sort of like the big piece there. So I just wanted to ask if like those pieces started with drawings and then connected to Grow Heart. Can you talk a little bit about how the pieces of those art pieces ended up in ours?
yeah, I actually made Quarta Bronc for my mother, and she was terminally ill, and I was showing at Lucio. You were showing at Lucio also around the trees for me. I make rooms, interactive rooms, and so this is an outdoor room is how Quarta Bronc became. And I wanted a space that my mother could access via wheelchair or with a very easy walk, that you stand under it and you just kind of feel this pulsing love, comfort all around you. And at that time, you could look up through it and see the organelles and see how the creature was functioning. It was hung from 22 feet in a tree. And so when you propose this show, and I'm going through all these transformations myself, it's been 3 years since I lost my mom, exactly. And when you sent me the poem, it's really what stimulated that thought of bringing the heart back into it because of the friendship I share with you. And you have been in my life. We've been in each other's lives for so long, and we love each other so much, and we interact in such amazing artistic ways together. It was the perfect thought for me. And I instantly saw it in the corner of Vermillion. And I instantly saw this sort of reforming of what the heart looks like, and also a heart in transformation. So it was, and also I think it was kind of your idea maybe to dip back into some of my work and use it. And the Cocoon pieces come from another piece that is about losing my grandmother that represents Maiden Mother Crone, multiple generations of my family. So giving those new life as sort of the centuries of the show made a lot of sense as well.
Yeah, I love that there's I was going to say legacy, but that sounds a little grandstanding, but there's a lineage, there's a sort of pedigree to Grow Heart, because the roots, you know, of the tree are this new heart circulatory system
tendrils
that
and
they are rooted.
Yeah,
we weren't just like, and there should be roots because it's a tree. Like they're real roots.
I saw veins and fungus and tendrils and roots, and that all came from your descriptions of what you wanted to feel.
Yeah, well, and with the roots that I put into the piece, some of the past installations that I've done with Jax Braun, who goes by Morty Arts artistically, we did a piece called In Knots in the woods, and there are moments in the loop where there's projected images that are sort of like look like they're on the side of a tree branch, or it sort of looks like light is passing between different trees in a forest and sort of creates a veil or something. And me and Jax had created something in the woods that there's a sort of veil going between the trees. And it's similar to Quarta Bronc in that, you know, using this illuminated translucent fabric, it kind of comes to life. It becomes like a sort of pulsing thing. And what I learned from that show was not the projections on the trees, which in itself was exciting. It was actually the shadows that came from our piece onto the trees that I wasn't projecting on. And I kind of realized, I mean, it's obvious, you know, which is the best thing about all, you know, really great true realizations. It's sort of, it was always there waiting for you. But, you know, there are no unnatural shadows. There's nothing. There's nothing unnatural about taking an electronic projector into the woods and hooking it up to a generator and pouring gasoline in that I mean, we are activities of nature ourselves. So I wanted to bring that into this piece as like that. And I think we both feel this way about our digital art. It comes from a completely organic and natural place.
Yeah, very much.
Synthetic. The only synthetic thing about it is maybe that we used computers, but people made those computers.
Well, but we're utilizing those different applications that we use, I think, to color these shadows in a lot of ways. I mean, I would accuse both you and I of working with shadows. I spent almost 5 years walking in the evenings with the notebook, just drawing shadows of nature. It informs so much of my work. The piece, like when you called today, and the piece I'm working on right now is reminiscent of all of those shapes as well. And I just love repeating forms. The tree forms that we see within us. I mean, turn a tree upside down and you have the inside of your lungs, you know? And so looking at this piece in general and seeing how you interpret it with your visuals, it's just extraordinary. And there's a lot of shadow play in it too. So yeah, that whole room is just,
I love that we're talking about the word shadows, because there is, and you know, like you said, the death of your mom, the death of your grandmother. And I place that, you know, took those ideas from you, and they're in the loop. You know, sometimes there's, for a moment, there's a pile of bones, multiple times, you know, as psychedelic as it is, there are mushrooms that are growing up, but usually right before the mushrooms grow up, I show you something that has died or something that's changed. And there's electricity in the loop that's supposed to sort of, you know, talk about like the relationship between our brain and our mind. And, you know, in the same way that trees can communicate through their root system underground, we, you know, psychically do that. So I think that the idea that there are these shadow answers that reveal themselves, you know, either unexpectedly or when we lose somebody, like at a moment when you don't feel like you're getting a gift, that's happening, even if it's tragic.
You have to live in the shadows and come back out of it. And I think you and I, because of how we live as artists, also, we're kind of always on the underbelly anyway. So I think we're more inclined to be okay with that space and to talk about it. And I also see that is kind of an effect of this show. And then the other thing that it's done is the way we've invited people in, we're being very honest about ourselves, and we're being very honest about our friendship and the love that we just have for our friends, our communities, plural, for nature. And the number one thing people keep saying is that they feel enveloped and they feel welcomed, and they feel the sense of shadow, but also the sense of rebirth. And I think that's the other thing that shadows can do. And also just the subject matter we're using in general, there's a regenerative quality to everything that's happening. And so, you know, I renamed her for this event too. So our whole thing being called Grow Heart. And then I've used aspects of Cocoon and Coeur de Bronc, but I'm calling her Coeur de Bronc in flux here because there's so much happening. And then these tendrils are reaching out to you too. They're reaching out to your work. I utilize driftwood instead of bones. That would be my interpretation of bones this time. So,
yeah, I know. And I love that idea, the bones reaching out. And I wanted to ask specifically about those tendrils, the crystalline pieces, because a lot of people have asked me about that, about how you create those forms with the knit, with that, you know, like if you talk a little bit about the crystallized bath and stuff.
Sure, absolutely. I kind of knit really intensely like a robot. I'm just very particular. And I had searched for years to kind of get that wabi-sabi into my work that I can't quite do with my own hands. So I'll show you with this thing, I employed like a child's hand crank knitting machine for the bigger pieces, because it kind of gives this sort of flumpy, natural it's just nature. It's more nature than I think I am. And so then I suspend these pieces and I crochet off of them as well with my own hand. And I dip them in a borax solution, just like when any of us were kids and we're making a Christmas ornament or something with our grandma. It's really that rudimentary. I've just taken it kind of to a new place. So my entire house becomes kind of a laboratory full of buckets from hardware stores and garbage cans that can handle hot water. And so, so basically I end up suspending these in there and you kind of never quite know what's going to happen. But in the end, it ends up giving, it kind of solidifies these forms that I've created, and nature takes its course, with the salts forming and how that's going to interact with the textile. So it's really cool. I have an idea, but the borax solution is going to completely transform that. And so what do we end up in the end is these things that look like neurons. They look like, if you go look at a scientific image of a neuron or of a heart cell or of mycelium or the fungus being that fruiting body coming up, it becomes representative of all of that. So anyway, that's all I do.
I'm so glad that it did too, because we talked about, that you got that idea from the way they were turning out in terms of like it literally being neurons and heart cells. And I was coming at the loop pretty abstractly to start, like I was feeling, I'm just going to put these vibes here and be confident they'll come out. But I think then I ended up just putting like a lot of the loop. It is literal neurons and heart cells that you're seeing. Yeah. So, which I think
it flows so elegantly with all, like, it makes the entire thing.
I love the idea of them being in this bath, because a lot of the visuals for me are about how your mind and your heart communicate or fail to communicate.
In my case, fail frequently.
Well, and for a lot of us. And I think the idea of the neuron being in a bath, that like I feel like my heart or my sort of more true self, which maybe is some sort of more like emotional abyss or whatever, right? Like
into the shadows.
Yeah, a thought puts walls up, and like your heart and your true self have a way of just like moving around that. Like, sure, you can be like, this is what my life's going to be about, and this is what I think is important. And then, you could lose a loved one or something unexpected, and it just goes right around that thought. Your life just has to. And so I love that these were created in a bath, because a lot of the visuals are a sort of electrical thought in an ocean.
Well, that's the thing. The salts. I mean, all of this is electrical, right?
Yes.
And the person
we're electrical.
started, right? And the person who got me started with this is a local artist, Megan Elizabeth Trainer. It was during the pandemic. Oh, nice coffee cup. I have my cup of ambition. Yeah, there we go. Yay. And so we were just doing backyard things. Like, what the hell could we do to keep our neurons from just collapsing? Our brains just felt flat during lockdown. And what I realized, like, for you to be talking about bathing, a bath, it's a spiritualized process. Like you said, our neurons are bathing chemicals, right? Oh. Our hearts are bathed in blood and all of the good things that are running through our bodies, hopefully mostly good things. And so putting these pieces in a bath, I have to relinquish control entirely. I have to just be like, I can mess with it a little bit. I can sort of tip the balance. I can play with temperatures and the amount of salts I put in it. I can put this form that I've spent all this loving time in. But in the end, you put it into that bath and it's coming out completely re-envisioned by those salts. It's completely spiritualized as a process. And I see your visuals as this constant honesty about who you are. To me, it's your visual music. You throw shapes when I'm playing music. And it's interesting because when I'm on stage, I'm frequently turning to watch them, because it tells me kind of about where you are today even. So it was exciting for me to create these pieces, not really knowing where you were going to go with the visuals. But when you sent me a teaser, you actually changed some of what I was doing. And I was like, oh, I need to make more. That's why I made more and more and more of these little tendrils, because what you sent me inspired me to just add more to the show.
Well, and I love that about our friendship. And I think that's why we're such great collaborators, is that we're strong personalities and we bring a lot into an art project. We're not just going to show up and be like, I don't have any ideas. Like, even if we say that, there's
Right.
things are starting.
We're going to
happen.
feed off of each other.
Yeah. Or a part of us is down, like wants to contrive something, and we're fighting that anyway. And
but it's not competitive. And I think that's the other thing I love. Like, you made the poem and you proposed this to me and you sent me the poem and I cried like a baby. I was like, this is the most beautiful, like, and I needed it. I'd had a really hard week and I was kind of feeling disconnected from my art and music life. I've had just a lot going on, and processing this 3rd anniversary. The world is open up now. My mom died at the beginning of COVID. All of these things have transformed. And so I actually really had time to sit with my grief differently. And so the poem comes up exactly when I need it. Yeah, it was really...
it just came out of me, the poem. Yeah. I mean, I think it's weird, like the way you talked about you draw something and then it becomes something else, you know, like with visuals. I guess it would make more sense if I drew it. But honestly, when I have to create something abstract, usually what I do is I write a poem, or I write something that's going to push my mind to try to tell a story, you know, with the availability to throw that out if it needs to be. Yeah. And so it's weird, but I've been practicing that for a couple of years now, where I'll write a poem and then I'll kind of just do visuals that feel like they say what the poem is saying. And only very recently have I also included the poem with the art. Usually I just present the visual piece. Nobody needs to know how I got to that part. But, you know, with our whole thing being Grow Heart, I think it's really cool that both for the way you experience the piece, the poem is a seed. And for us, it was a seed, you know.
Entirely. I refer to it a lot, actually. And if I felt frustrated with my process, I would just sit down and I would open up your email and just read it again. And then at some point I'm like, okay, copy pasta, put it in my phone, kept it in my notes. And so it was just kind of, sometimes I literally would just leave it up while I was playing with borax. And I gave it a lot of contemplation. And it's interesting because the way that I get from point A to point B with my work, it's often very automatic. And actually being in that space of Vermillion, and also even thinking about Diana and how she invites us into the space. And I'm already just be prepared. I have more ideas for you. But because that space is like a playground in so many great ways. But yeah, so this time, everything was just kind of more automatic. Yes, I did drawings largely of the space. It's more typical. I actually have some right here because I'm in my studio. It's more typical for me to sit around and draw something, make a ton of notes, and then set to work knitting it or sewing or something like this. This time, I more just envisioned that poem, thought about you and I, thought about your visuals, thought about kind of the rebirth of everything, and set to work. So my drawings this time are a little more embarrassing than the one I just showed.
That's great.
A lot of Sharpie drawings.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I also just, before we wrap up, want to say thank you to Diana and Vermillion for being so awesome, because John and Al and everybody who works there is just so cool. And I felt very loved during this whole show. Yeah, there's such a great supportive environment when, there's cause for pressure if people want to play it like that. And we've definitely worked with people like that before, but it's nice to be we put the pressure on ourselves, and Diana knows that. So,
well, and you encouraged me for this show to come out to the world as Ray also. And yeah, it was time to use my gay name. It was time to stop having it hide in the shadows. Kelly Fleek is an entity, and that's great. And I love that. But I feel more even connected. Like that was the perfect place. And you made it all beautiful. Everything that you wrote, all of the design.
Well, I love that.
I felt very held by that.
Because it, in a two-person collaborate, that's a big story for you, right? So I don't want the piece to, and this too, they kind of have to meet, and they do, which is awesome. And also
it's a quiet celebration though. I like that. People.
When I think of Blazinspace as it's so literal, but it's space. Mm-hmm. It's not, it doesn't have to be me. It doesn't have to mean John. So to me, it's a perfect example of how I like to collaborate. It's I would rather aesthetically give space for someone else to fill in and kind of work with that. And that's what we did.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. And I really love just every interpretation I have heard so far. Yeah, I cried all the way home after opening night. Just like, yeah, good tears.
I was
like,
beaming. It was a great opening night. And we're having a closing party
Yes.
On February 3rd at Vermillion. It goes from 6 to 9, but there's also 2 great shows that me and Ray recommend you go to after. At Cafe Racer next door, Ex Florist is playing with AJ Suede, and there's another person on that bill. It's amazing. And then also at Madame Lou's, Taylor Elizabeth.
Madame Lou's, Taylor Elizabeth. And I will give a quick shout out too, because I'm pretty sure Day Soul Exquisite is at the Tractor that night. And so I really need.
Oh, I think that's the next week, actually.
Is it the next week?
Oh, February 9th. Day Soul Exquisite with Ladybug.
Yeah.
It's a great bill. So yeah, also recommend that show on February 9th. So
I'm just excited about shows. So okay, don't cut that. But yeah.
No, but go to both. Go to our show and then the next week go to the other show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the other thing I want to say is just bring up Noel for a second. I'm going to show a clip from the Astral Media Lab interview with Noel here.
I just wanted to play in a project that was always evolving and always, I guess, we'll go back to Chameleon Eyes, but improvising and creating in a way that wasn't tied down to any anchor of structural, like, this is it, it's jazz, it's funk, it's, I just wanted it to be whatever we were going for, I guess. Mission accomplished so far.
Hell yes.
People that don't know, you play in several projects right now. This solo project that we're featuring in this podcast arena under your name.
Under my own name, under my own human
Moniker?
Skin.
This is his real skin.
Real, true human
night,
identity.
Night Blooming Jasmine cover. NBJ.
Yes.
He is also in a fantastic band called Africop.
Thank you, yeah.
And
this
another,
gentleman right here.
this one as well.
Yes.
And another fantastic band called Select Level.
Select Level, yes.
And
Andy's band, yes. It's still that open soul prospect of, I don't have any, I almost don't distinguish them. I just let them just kind of create as they spawn off into their own little things,
Noel's music is so great for this. I mean, I thought of us, we work together musically, and part of the loop is about electricity, and the heart gets up to about 120 beats per minute in the loop. And at that moment, which is the part that's playing behind me here, we go into this sort of empty dance floor, and that's actually a 3D remake of a dance floor that I'm very familiar with. And so music, it was important to have music somewhere here because it's in the loop and it's in our friendship. And we don't necessarily want to use the same music that we collaborate with regularly.
Right.
And the great thing about Noel is that his whole thing is open soul policy. Just let it out. And that's where we're coming from. And it's so cool that the two pieces just seem to meet in the middle.
It's actually perfect. And we really here's the official gentle nag to Noel. I think the three of us need to be conceiving of some things together because that music just absolutely illuminated everything that we were doing. And yeah, it's just so meditative and sublime. It was ideal. So
yeah, I recommend to anybody. I think it's only $10 a year, which is absurdly a good deal to get all of Noel's music.
Yeah,
and
it's kind of amazing.
Releases new tracks all the time, so it's the best subscription shows. Better than HBO, better than anything. $10 all
If you're happy, sad, or otherwise, that music is perfect. It's every mood is that music. I love it.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Ray.
Thank you. Love you. Appreciate you.
I love you too.